Gene Hackman, the legendary actor whose name once commanded attention on every screen, is now at the center of a chilling mystery that has captivated the world. The two-time Oscar-winning legend, known for his memorable roles in films like The French Connection and Unforgiven, was found dead in his Santa Fe mansion alongside his wife, the renowned pianist Betsy Arakawa. Initially, authorities attributed their deaths to natural causes. Gene succumbed to heart failure exacerbated by Alzheimer's, and Betsy tragically contracted a rare disease transmitted by rodents. The cause seemed clear enough, and the world mourned the loss of a beloved icon. However, just as the grief began to settle, a shocking twist emerged that would rip apart everything we thought we knew about the couple's deaths. A neighbor's startling testimony and an unexpected breakthrough in the investigation forced authorities to reopen the case. What the investigators discovered buried beneath the floorboards of the Hackman mansion would leave even the most seasoned detectives speechless. Tucked away behind a false wall in the basement, a sealed wooden box was found, one that contained handwritten notes, documents, and a USB drive holding audio recordings of Gene Hackman's final words. The recordings, made months before his death, would shatter the entire narrative built by the authorities and reveal a terrifying truth. Gene's voice, though frail and punctuated by long pauses, was clear in its conviction. I no longer trust some people I once loved. I feel like I'm being watched. I don't know what's happening, but if something happens to me, check my will. It's not the one I wrote. With this revelation, the investigation took a startling turn. What was initially believed to be a natural death now seemed more like the carefully executed act of a predator. And the prime suspect, none other than Gene Hackman's own daughter, Leslie Ann. Hackman quickly came under intense scrutiny. Leslie, who had always been seen as a distant figure in her father's life, now appeared to be at the center of a web of deceit and betrayal. Authorities began combing through phone records, security footage, and financial documents, uncovering evidence that would point directly to Leslie Ann's involvement in the plot to kill her father. Leslie had claimed that her last conversation with Gene took place just a few weeks before his death, insisting that everything had seemed normal. But the truth told a different story. A neighbor revealed that Leslie had been seen on the property long before the bodies were discovered, a statement that contradicted her claims of being out of town for months. Even more damning, phone records painted a picture that didn't match her account. Despite her insistence that she had spoken to Gene, the records showed no calls, texts, or messages between the father and daughter for months. This lie, small as it seemed, was the first crack in Leslie Ann's story. As the investigation deepened, more disturbing evidence surfaced. The motion sensors in the house had been triggered at odd times, even though the front door remained untouched and no signs of forced entry were found. Initial theories suggested that couples to surviving dogs might have triggered the sensors, but further investigation ruled that out. The dogs had been confined to a separate room during the time in question, making it impossible for them to have caused the unusual activity. The second theory, that Gene or Betsy had triggered the sensors with their last movements, also crumbled when investigators examined the data from Gene's pacemaker, which had stopped functioning before the sensors were triggered. This left one chilling possibility. An intruder had gained access to the house. But how? There were no signs of forced entry, suggesting that the intruder either had a key or knew of a secret way in. This theory began to hold water as investigators dug deeper. Security footage from local stores confirmed that Leslie Ann had been in Santa Fe in the weeks leading up to her father's death, despite her denial to police. The timing was suspicious, and authorities began to connect the dots. Leslie Ann had been in town, lying about her whereabouts, and now the evidence was starting to point toward her. As more and more details emerged, investigators found troubling financial activity linked to Leslie Ann, just days before Gene's death. Someone accessed his sensitive financial documents, and what they found raised more questions than answers. Pages were missing, signatures didn't match, and Leslie Ann's name appeared repeatedly in the files. It seemed that Leslie Ann had been moving quickly to secure her financial future, even before her father's body had been discovered. She had initiated legal steps to gain access to his assets, making moves to redistribute his wealth without anyone knowing. But why? Further investigation revealed that Gene's medication, which he needed to manage his heart condition, was missing from the house. He had relied on a strict regimen of pills to stay healthy, but the prescriptions were nowhere to be found. A search of local pharmacies turned up a fraudulent prescription order under Gene's name, picked up by a woman who resembled Leslie Ann. Was this part of her plan? Had she deliberately removed the medication to ensure that Gene's health would deteriorate rapidly, making his death seem natural? Leslie Ann's motive became more apparent as investigators uncovered a history of strained relations between her and her father. Gene's divorce from her mother had left Leslie Ann feeling abandoned, and her resentment only grew as Gene built a new life with Betsy. A close confidant of the family revealed that Leslie Ann had been furious when Gene refused to bankroll her failed business venture. Her bitterness grew when she learned that Gene had left more of his fortune to Betsy in his will. It was clear that Leslie Ann's resentment had festered for years, and now it seemed she had orchestrated a plan to seize her father's estate. Evidence suggested that Leslie had taken steps to weaken her father's health and stage a death that would look natural. She had been in control of the financial documents, had access to his medications, and had manipulated the system to secure her own future. The final piece of the puzzle came when investigators found another anomaly. Gene's pacemaker had stopped functioning, but there was no record of it being checked or replaced, a significant oversight that may have contributed to his decline. With the discovery of this evidence, the police were able to piece together the horrific truth. Leslie Ann had been plotting her father's death for months, and the evidence was clear. She had manipulated financial documents, lied about her whereabouts, and even tampered with her father's medication to ensure that his death appeared to be from natural causes.
Ow.
The investigation was no longer a quest to uncover the truth. Behind a tragic death, it had turned into a pursuit of justice for a man betrayed by the one person he should have been able to trust most. As the investigation into Gene Hackman and his wife Betsy's deaths continued, more pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place, painting a chilling picture of betrayal and greed. With Leslie Ann Hackman now the primary suspect, authorities began to connect the dots in ways that no one could have imagined. The discovery of a sealed wooden box in the basement of the Hackman estate, hidden behind a false wall, was only the beginning. Inside the box, investigators found dozens of handwritten notes, documents, and a USB drive containing audio recordings of Gene Hackman himself speaking with an unmistakable sense of urgency. One of the recordings, made months before his death, revealed a startling message that would ultimately change the course of the investigation. "I no longer trust some people I once loved. I feel like I'm being watched. I don't know what's happening, but if something happens to me, check my will. It's not the one I wrote." These words were a chilling premonition of what was to come, a forewarning that the truth behind Gene's death was far darker than anyone could have imagined. The evidence, when analyzed, showed that Gene had prepared a different will, one that excluded his daughter, Leslie Ann, and left everything to his wife, Betsy, and various charitable causes. This will, signed and witnessed months before his death, stood in stark contrast to the one Leslie Ann had been attempting to alter, which would have given her control over a portion of Gene's estate. The discovery of these documents immediately shifted the focus of the investigation to Leslie Ann, and the evidence against her began to mount. In the days following the reopening of the case, police uncovered disturbing details about Leslie Ann's actions in the months leading up to her father's death. Phone records revealed that, despite Leslie Ann's claims that she had not been in touch with her father for months, there was clear evidence of communication between them. A neighbor's testimony contradicted her story, stating that she had seen Leslie Ann near the Hackman estate weeks before the bodies were discovered, even though she had denied being in Santa Fe for months. This was the first of many lies Leslie Ann would be caught in, each one unraveling her carefully constructed narrative. But it wasn't just phone records that painted Leslie Ann as the key figure in this crime. Investigators uncovered troubling financial activity that suggested Leslie Ann had been making moves to seize her father's fortune long before his death was even announced. Just days before Gene's death, someone accessed his sensitive financial documents. The signatures on those documents didn't match Gene's. Moreover, Leslie Ann's name appeared repeatedly in the financial records, where she had initiated legal steps to request access to Gene's accounts and redistribute his assets. This rush to reorganize Gene's estate, before his death was even publicly known, raised significant suspicions. The more the investigators dug, the more they discovered about Leslie Ann's manipulative behavior. Security footage from local stores confirmed her presence in Santa Fe in the weeks before Jean's death, further contradicting her repeated denials to the police. It was clear that Leslie Ann had been orchestrating a plan to claim her father's wealth, and she had been doing so for months. In addition to the financial discrepancies, the investigation uncovered that Jean's vital heart medication had gone missing from the house. Jean had relied on this medication to manage his heart condition, but when investigators searched the Hackman estate, there were no prescriptions to be found. The absence of these critical medications raised a crucial question. Had someone intentionally removed them to accelerate Jean's decline? It seemed that Jean's death, once thought to be the result of natural causes, might have been part of a meticulously crafted scheme. Forensic experts found a fraudulent prescription order under Jean's name at a local pharmacy in surveillance. Footage revealed a woman who resembled Leslie Ann picking up the order. Was this another calculated step in her plan? Had she deliberately allowed her father's health to deteriorate by depriving him of the medications he so desperately needed? The evidence against Leslie Ann continued to build. Authorities discovered that she had initiated discussions with multiple law firms about her inheritance rights on the very day Jean's pacemaker recorded its final beat. This was further confirmation that Leslie Ann had been preparing for her father's death long before it occurred. Her desperation to claim his fortune, coupled with her false statements and suspicious behavior, painted a picture of a woman willing to go to any lengths to achieve her goals. But the most damning discovery came when police decrypted the USB drive found in the wooden box. Inside the drive were more of Jean's final recordings, including one in which he expressed his deep concerns about his safety and the people around him. "I feel like I'm being watched. I don't know what's happening, but if something happens to me, check my will." "It's not the one I wrote," he said, his voice strained with worry. This recording, along with the newly discovered will, confirmed what investigators had long suspected. Leslie Ann had been planning her father's death for months. The will, which excluded her entirely, made it clear that Jean had been aware of her intentions and had sought to protect his wealth from her greed. The investigation continued to uncover more pieces of the puzzle. Financial audits revealed that Leslie Ann had been transferring money into offshore accounts, making discreet withdrawals, and paying off shell companies. While each individual transaction seemed small, together they formed a clear pattern of financial manipulation. Leslie Ann had been preparing to take control of her father's assets long before his death, and her actions in the weeks leading up to his passing were calculated to ensure she would inherit everything. Finally, the evidence was irrefutable. Leslie Ann Hackman was arrested and charged with multiple counts, including financial fraud, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy to murder her father. The trial that followed revealed the true extent of her scheme of cold, ruthless strategy designed to rob her father of everything he had worked for. The court quickly convicted Leslie Ann, and she was stripped of any inheritance she might have claimed. The funds she had illicitly moved were seized and redirected to the charitable causes that Jean had quietly supported throughout his life. This case, which began as a tragic tale of illness and fate, turned out to be a story of betrayal, greed, and calculated murder. Jean Hackman's life, despite all his accomplishments and fame, was not immune to the treachery of those closest to him. His death serves as a stark reminder that even those we trust most can be capable of the most heinous acts. In the end, Jean's story isn't just one of a legendary actor. It's a sobering, cautionary tale about the dangers of greed and the devastating impact it can have on the people we love the most.